Smoke covered the battlefield like a thick blanket. The sky was orange with fire, and broken ships lay like dead animals. Everything was silent, except the crackling of flames and the buzzing of dying machines. In the middle of it all, an alien. Girl lay still. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes half closed, her leg badly burned. Blood, dark and sticky, soaked the dirt under her. She tried to move, but her body refused. Zarya, that was her name. She had once been a warrior, proud and trained, but now she was nothing, just another broken thing left behind. Her ears twitched at the sound of vengeance. She turned her head slowly, pain stabbing through her neck. A ship was flying away, leaving smoke behind it, her own people. They had seen her, heard her, but they still left. No rescue, no message, no goodbye. She opened her mouth and screamed, "Wait." But her voice came out as a whisper. They were gone. She was alone. Zarya looked at the sky, her vision fading. Maybe this was it. Maybe she would die right here, forgotten like a crushed bug. But then she heard something strange. Footsteps. Not soft like her people's feet, but heavy boots. Human boots. Her heart started beating faster, not from hope, but fear. Humans were enemies. Brutal, cold, and merciless. If he found her, he would kill her. She tried to crawl, but her arm gave out. The footsteps grew closer. Through the smoke, a shadow appeared, tall, strong, with armor and a weapon. The human soldier stopped a few feet away from her. He looked down at her, unmoving. Zarya forced herself to meet his eyes. She expected to see hate, but instead, his eyes looked tired, not angry, not wild, just tired. He lowered his rifle, slowly. Then knelt beside her. Zarya froze, her body shaking. Was this how it ended? A clean shot and silence again. But the human didn't aim. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small bottle of water. He opened it and gently placed it near her lips. She stared at him, confused. Was this a trick? Poison. But her throat burned and her lips were cracked. Without thinking, she drank. The water was warm, but it felt like life. Tears slipped from her eyes, not from pain, but from confusion. The human spoke, but she didn't understand the words still. His tone was calm. He opened a small kit and began wrapping her injured leg. Her people had left her to die, but this enemy was saving her. She tried to speak, her voice soft. Why? The human looked at her, then back at her wound. He didn't answer. In the distance, voices crackled over his radio. Extraction ready. Soldier report status. The human paused. He looked at Zarya, then pressed the radio. I found a survivor, he said, slowly. His voice was unsure. Not one of ours. Came the sharp reply. Leave it and move. He looked at the radio, then at her again. Zarya saw his jaw tighten. I can't, he said. She's hurt. There. With silence on the other end. Repeat that, soldier? I said I'm staying. The radio hissed. That's desertion, but the human had already turned it off. He lifted her carefully, placing her across his shoulder like she weighed nothing. Zarya gasped in pain, but he didn't stop. He walked slowly, one step at a time, away from the extraction zone. Away from safety, carrying an enemy. Zarya rested her head against his back. His armor was scratched and warm from the sun. Her body hurt, her mind spun with questions. But for the first time since she fell, she felt like she wasn't alone. The dust swirled around them. The battlefield faded into silence once more. But now, two shadows moved across it, one limping, one carrying, one human, one alien, and neither knew what tomorrow would bring. But for tonight, they had each other. The night was cold, and the ground was rough under his boots. John, the human soldier, moved quietly through the dark valley. Zarya hung limp over his back, her breathing shallow. Every step made his legs burn, but he didn't stop. Behind him, explosions still echoed in the distance. Flares lit up the sky for seconds before fading. The war wasn't over. But something inside John had already changed. He was no longer just a soldier. He was now a man carrying someone who everyone else had left to die. He reached the edge of a broken ridge and gently laid her down. They were surrounded by large pieces of metal scraps from destroyed ships. John found a small space beneath a tilted wing and crawled in with her. It was just big enough to rest and stay hidden. Zarya opened her eyes slowly. The pain in her leg was still strong, but her mind was clearer now. She stared at the human who had brought her here. He was checking his weapon, making sure it was ready, but he didn't point it at her. She didn't understand. He had every reason to kill her. She was an alien, his enemy, but instead he had carried her for miles, protected her from drones, and now gave her shelter. Her voice was weak, but she whispered, "Why?" John didn't answer right away. He pulled off his helmet and looked at Horelli. Her skin was scratched and dirty, her eyes tired but full of life. "You're just a girl," he said quietly. Zarya tilted her head, confused. The translator chip in her ear struggled to keep up, but she understood some of the words. He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of protein bread. He broke it in half and handed her a piece. Zarya took it slowly, still unsure if she should trust him, but her stomach growled and her hands were shaking. She took a bite dry, tasteless, but it filled her. They sat in silence, the war around them distant but not forgotten. John leaned back and stared at the stars through the gaps in the metal above them. "I've seen too much death," he said, not looking at her. "My squad. We were ordered to clear this area, shoot anything that moved." He paused, his jaw tightening. "But when I saw you lying there, bleeding and alone..." He glanced at her again. "You looked human." Zarya blinked, surprised. "I'm not." She whispered, "I know," he replied, "but you looked scared, hurt, like anyone would be." She wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. She hadn't cried since she was a child. Warriors didn't cry, at least not in front of others. But now, alone with this strange human, she felt the tears coming. "Thank you," she said softly. John gave a small nod. "Don't thank me yet," he said. "They'll come looking for you, for me, for anyone still breathing." Zarya's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you kill me?" John looked at her again, and this time his voice was harder. "Because I'm tired of killing. Because maybe saving one life means more than ending one." Zarya looked down. She remembered the moment her own kind left her behind. She had screamed, begged, but they didn't stop. Not one ship turned back, not even a glance. And now, the one who should have hated her saved her instead. She reached out, her hand trembling, and touched his arm. Not to attack, not to fight, just to say she understood. John didn't move away. He let her hand stay. The silence between them was no longer awkward, was peaceful. Like the eye of the storm, suddenly, the radio on John's belt crackled. A voice came through gruff. "Angry soldier, this is command. Where are you? Respond immediately." John looked at the device, but didn't touch it. Zarya watched him, holding her breath. The voice came again. "We know you're alive, and we know what you did. If you're found with the alien, you'll be treated." As a traitor, John picked up the radio, held it to his mouth. He didn't hesitate. "I'm alive," he said, "and she's still alive too." There was silence. Then, "You've made your choice." The voice growled. "You're on your own now." The radio went dead. John placed it on the ground and crushed it under his boot. Zarya stared at him. "You gave up your people for me." "No," he said calmly. "I gave up orders. They gave up on you first." Zarya didn't know what to say, but something inside her, something broken, felt a little less empty. Outside, the war still raged, but in the small space. Between two enemies, a different kind of battle was beginning. One of trust, survival, and maybe something more. John opened his eyes to the sound of metal creaking. The night had passed. But sleep hadn't brought peace. He was still in enemy territory, hiding under a broken alien ship wing with a wounded alien girl beside him. Zarya was awake too. Her face pale, eyes quietly scanning the shadows. She was silent. But her breathing was more steady now. John shifted to sit up, groaning as his back popped. He hadn't slept on solid ground like this in weeks. But worse than the ground was the worry in his chest. He peeked through a small gap in the wreckage. The smoke had cleared slightly, and the red sun was rising. That meant patrols would begin, both human and alien, both hunting anything that survived. "We can't stay here," John muttered. Zarya nodded, though she still looked weak. She tried to stand, but her injured leg shook under her. She dropped back down with a hiss of pain. John knelt beside her, checking the bandage. It was soaked through again. He needed to find better supplies. This wouldn't last another day. Zarya looked at him, her voice low. "I can walk, just." Slowly. John didn't argue. Instead, he pulled off his shoulder strap and made a sling around her so she could lean on him. She didn't resist, though her pride clearly hated it. Together, they stepped out into the open to enemies. Both broken, both hunted. The terrain had changed. They entered the old battlefield's ruins, filled with shattered alien structures. Statues had fallen, homes turned to dust. It was Zarya's homeland once. Now, it was only pain as they walked. She spoke more. "I trained here," she said softly. "Before the war came." John looked around at the ruins. "Looks like peace didn't last long," he replied. Zarya paused at a broken wall. She ran her fingers along markings carved into it. "They called me a disappointment." She whispered, too slow, too soft. John stopped and looked at her. "You were a soldier." "I was trying to be," she said, "but I failed." She pointed to the deep scar on her leg. "They left me because I lost." John tightened his grip on the strap she leaned against. "My squad left me, too," he said. "I disobeyed orders to kill you, so now I'm a traitor." Zarya turned her head, eyes wide. "You gave up everything for me," she whispered. He shrugged. "Didn't feel right, leaving you to die." For a few moments, they just stood. They're two people with no side, no flag, only each other. Suddenly, a loud sound broke the stillness. A scout drone whirred overhead, scanning the area. John pulled her into a dark corner, covering her mouth gently. The drone passed, but it was a close call. "Too close," he said. After it vanished, Zarya looked shaken. "We won't last like this," she said. Even together, John didn't argue. They were weak, wounded, and alone. He looked around and spotted a fallen alien transport vehicle, mostly buried under rubble. He pointed to it. "Maybe there's something inside we can use." They moved slowly toward it, carefully climbing over twisted metal. Inside, they found a half-broken medical kit, a cracked translator device, and a dried food pack. It wasn't much, but to them, it was gold. John fixed the bandage on her leg with fresh wraps from the kit. Then he turned to the translator, adjusting wires until the small screen blinked on. Zarya picked it up, and her voice came through clearly. "Can you hear me now?" John smiled for the first time in hours. "Loud and clear," he said. It was strange. He was a soldier, trained to hate her kind. But now, her voice made him feel calm. She didn't sound like an alien anymore. She just sounded like someone trying to survive just like him. As they rested in the vehicle's shade, John asked quietly, "What happens if your people find you?" Zarya's face darkened. "They won't help," she said. "They'll silence me, erase the shame, and mine will shoot you on sight," John added. They both sat in silence, knowing their situation was impossible. After a moment, Zarya looked up. "I have an idea," she said. "There's an old cave system nearby, a sacred place. It might still be safe." John raised an eyebrow. "Sacred to your kind?" She nodded. "No one dares to go there, not even now." John looked out at the red sky. "Then it's our best shot." As the sun climbed higher, they moved again, weaker than ever, but no longer hopeless. Each step they took together made the bond between them stronger. They weren't enemies anymore, not just survivors. Something was growing between them, something neither fully understood. But one thing was clear. They only had each other now, and that had to be enough. John and Zarya moved carefully through the cracked hills. Dust clung to their skin, and the air tasted like ash. Each step was harder than the last. Zarya's wound had stopped bleeding, but the pain had not stopped. Still, she didn't complain. John noticed, but said nothing. The translator device buzzed gently on her chest, clipped to a broken strap. It wasn't perfect, but now they could speak without guessing. That changed everything. "Are you sure this cave exists?" John asked, adjusting his rifle as he looked around. Zarya gave a small nod. "It's not far now," she said. "We used to pray there before the war." He raised an eyebrow. "You? Pray?" She looked at him, her voice calm. "My kind has faith too, even if your people don't believe it." John didn't argue. He was never the religious type, but at that moment, any place that gave hope was worth walking toward. As they traveled, they passed the wreckage of both human and alien tech, crashed ships, melted guns, helmets with no heads inside them. This wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was a graveyard. Zarya limped slightly behind him, her face pale but steady. She looked at the ruins with sad eyes. "I knew someone who died here," she said softly. John turned. "A friend?" She shook her head. "No," she replied. "My sister." He stopped walking. The wind blew around them, carrying the silence. "I'm sorry," he said. After a while, Zarya looked down. She said, "I wasn't strong enough to be a warrior." She smiled faintly. Maybe she was right. John stepped closer. "You're still alive," he said. "That counts for something." They kept moving until they reached a slope covered in twisted roots and ancient stone. Zarya pointed. "There," she said. A narrow opening was half hidden behind broken tree trunks and vines. It looked small, but it went deep. John cleared the way, pushing the debris aside. Zarya followed, her legs shaking as she entered the shadowed path inside. It was cool and quiet, like the world above didn't exist. The walls of the cave were covered in carving strange symbols, stars and long-forgotten names. Zarya touched the wall. "With reverence, this place remembers," she whispered. They found a flat spot near a stone altar where John helped her sit. She winced as she bent her leg. John opened the last medical wrap and worked silently. He was gentle, even when her breath caught in pain. "You're good at this," she said, watching him. "I've done it enough times," he replied, "for humans." He nodded. "And now aliens," she added. He looked at her, tired eyes meeting hers. "I didn't plan this," he said. Zarya gave a small smile. "Neither did I." They sat in silence for a while, the cave echoing only the soft sounds of dripping water. Then she said something unexpected. "I dreamed of killing humans once." John looked at her, but didn't speak. She continued. "When the war started, they told us stories how humans were monsters, how you destroyed everything and felt nothing." "Sounds familiar," John muttered. "They said the same things about your people." She looked at him seriously. "Do you still believe it?" John shook his head slowly. "I believe in what I see," he said, "and right now, I see someone fighting to live." "Not a monster," Zarya didn't reply, but her eyes softened. They didn't need to speak much now. Oh, there was something stronger. Then words forming between them. Later, as John checked his gear, Zarya quietly asked, "Will your people come for you?" He thought for a moment. "No," he said. "Not after I turned off the radio." "Then you're like me now," she whispered. "Alone." He asked. "No," she replied. "Abandoned." He looked at her for a long second. "Maybe that's why we found each other," he said. That night, they shared the last of the food. It wasn't much, just dry rations and half a bar of protein. But it felt like a meal, not because of the taste, but because they were no longer eating alone. When Zarya finally closed her eyes, she whispered something in her native language. The translator tried but failed to convert it. John asked, "What did you say?" She smiled gently, eyes still closed. "It means, those who walk together cannot be forgotten." John didn't respond. He just sat beside her, watching the cave entrance like a silent guardian. Outside, the world was still dangerous. But inside, for the first time, they were safe. The cave kept them safe for 2 days, but safety didn't last in a world torn by war. Zarya's leg was healing, but slowly she still limped. Leaning on John as they stepped out into the dry light of the alien dawn. The air was hot, dry, and filled with wind-blown sand. It scraped against their faces, got into their clothes, and left a bitter taste on their tongues. They had no food left, no water. And the cave could not protect them forever. "We need to." "Move," John said, scanning the horizon. "There might be an outpost near the ridge." Zarya didn't argue. Her stomach was empty, her body tired, but she trusted his eyes more than her own now. They moved slowly, their shadows long across the sand. Each step was a struggle. John carried most of the weight, his gear, his rifle, and Zarya's arm around his shoulders. But he didn't complain. He only looked forward, like a man with something left to protect. After some time, Zarya looked at him and asked, "Why do you keep helping me?" John didn't answer right away. He stared at the sand ahead, lips pressed tight. Finally, he said, "Because no one helped my sister." Zarya blinked. "You had a sister." John nodded slowly. "Years ago. She got sick during a mission. I was on. No one stayed with her. No one stayed long enough to help. I was too late." Zarya's voice softened. "You carry her with you." He nodded again. Every day, they didn't speak for a while after that. The wind filled the silence with its sad howls. But something deeper had been shared, something real, later that day. They found shelter in the ruins of an old alien transport center. Most of it was destroyed, walls fallen, ceilings missing. But there was shade and a dry well. John peered into the well, tied a rope to a metal bar, and lowered an empty canteen to their surprise. It came back with water, dusty but drinkable. Zarya drank first, and then John. The cold water brought life back to their dry throats as they rested in the shade. Zarya suddenly tensed. Her ears twitched. "Someone's coming," she whispered. John grabbed his rifle and pulled her behind a broken wall. They both crouched, holding their breath. Footsteps, real, solid, goad across the sand. Not one person, but many. Voices too, but not human. Alien soldiers. Zarya's heart pounded. "They're from my planet," she whispered. "The red claws, they don't forgive weakness." John held his rifle close. "If they see you, they'll kill you." Zarya looked at him. "Same if they see you." The patrol passed close, 6 aliens, armored and armed. They didn't see the 2 hidden figures, but as they moved away, one of them paused. He turned his head, sniffed the air. Zarya grabbed John's arm. Eyes wide, the soldier walked toward their hiding spot, step by step. John raised his rifle butt. Zarya shook her head. "They move by smell and sound," she whispered. John didn't breathe, didn't blink. The alien soldier came closer now, just 3 meters away. Zarya slowly reached into her belt and threw a small piece of metal far to the left. It landed with a sharp clink. The soldier turned sharply and ran toward the sound. The others followed, their voices echoing as they vanished over the hill. John and Zarya waited a full minute before they moved. He exhaled slowly. That was close, he said. Zarya nodded. They're not here for survivors. They're here to erase evidence. John helped her stand. We can't stay here. There's a canyon ahead. We'll lose them there. As they moved again, Zarya's steps became slower, her face pale from pain. John noticed her limping worse than before. Are you okay? He asked. She tried to nod, but her voice cracked. It's the wound. It's swelling. John stopped, laid her down gently, and unwrapped the bandage. His eyes narrowed. Her leg was inflamed. A soft red glow under the skinner. Reaction 2. Human fabric mixed with alien blood. This is bad, he muttered. Zarya gritted her teeth. I can't slow you down, she said. Leave me if you must. John stood up straight and stared down at her. Not a chance, he said. You didn't leave me in the cave. I'm not leaving you in the sand. She looked at him, eyes glassy with pain and emotion. You're the only one who says that. He smiled faintly. Then I'll say it again. John picked her up once more. Her head rested on his shoulder, weak but safe. She whispered, even with no legs. I still want to walk beside you, and with that, he stepped forward again, carrying her through the sand, following footprints that would soon disappear behind them, but together. They were walking toward something that no army could destroy. The sky turned red as the twin suns began to set. John moved with heavy steps, carrying Zarya in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, her face burning with fever. She had stopped speaking an hour ago, only whispering now and then. The infection in her leg was spreading fast. John could feel the heat radiating from her skin. He looked around the canyon, dry and lifeless. But somewhere ahead there had to be shelter, or they wouldn't survive the night. He spotted a cluster of rocks shaped like broken teeth. Between them was a narrow gap, dark but wide enough to crawl through. John entered carefully, holding Zarya close. Inside, it opened into a hidden space, like a hollow carved by time. Cooler air filled the small cavern, and water dripped from above into a stone basin. John laid Zarya down gently on a flat rock. She stirred, her voice weak. Where are we? Safe, he said softly, for now. He tore off his sleeve and soaked it in the dripping water, then placed it gently on her forehead. Her eyes fluttered open, and she gave a faint smile. You're still here, she whispered. Not going anywhere, John replied. She tried to laugh, but it turned into a cough. I thought humans gave up when things got hard. John chuckled once. Not this human. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from outside like metal hitting stone. John's body went still. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the cave entrance. Peeking out with narrowed eyes down below in the canyon, lights moved, bright red beams scanning the sand. Soldiers, and not just any soldiers, both alien and human. Units, together. John's heart sank. What the hell is going on? He whispered. Zarya heard him and lifted her head slightly. What do you see? Both sides, he said. But they're not fighting each other. They're working together. Zarya's eyes widened. That's not peace, she whispered. That's a cover-up. John nodded grimly. They're looking for us. She sat up slowly, biting her lip to stop from crying out. If they catch us, they'll erase everything, she said. No one will ever know what really happened here. John stared at the patrols, his fists clenched. They'll erase you, he said. And they'll call me a traitor. They don't want the war to end with questions. Zarya looked at him, her voice soft. Then we run. John shook his head. We can't outrun them, not in your condition. She grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Then leave me, she said again. Let them take me, and you can escape. No, he said sharply. I've lost too many people already. But I'm not human, she whispered. He looked her in the eyes. You're more human than most I've met. Outside, the soldiers grew closer now, just minutes away. John checked his ammo. Only 3 rounds left. Zarya pulled a small dagger from her belt and held it tightly. If we go down together, she said. John nodded once. They waited in silence, listening to the footsteps grow louder. But just before the enemy reached the cave, another sound cut through the air. A ship flying low, fast. It wasn't part of the patrol. John looked up sharply. The ship bore old human markings, faded but real. It landed on a ledge above the canyon. And a figure jumped out, an older man with a gray beard and a worn officer's jacket. John. The man shouted. John's eyes widened. Commander Hensley. Zarya looked confused. Who is that? My old CO, John said. He was discharged for arguing with high command. Hensley waved them forward. Hurry, before they see you. John lifted Zarya again and sprinted toward the ship. The patrol spotted them, and shots rang out across the canyon. Bullets hit the rocks, sparks flying around them. John didn't stop. He jumped onto the ramp and dove inside the ship. With Zarya in his arms, Hensley slammed the hatch shut and hit the thrusters. The ship lifted fast, and within seconds, they were flying above the red sky. Safe for now. Inside the cockpit, Hensley turned. You've made quite a mess, soldier, he said. John looked down at Zarya, who was barely conscious. She's worth it, he replied. Hensley nodded. Then let's make the galaxy hear her story. The stars outside the ship window moved slowly, not like in battle, not like an escape this time. They floated in peace. Zarya lay in a real bed for the first time in weeks. Clean sheets, quiet air, and the steady hum of the ship around. Her leg was wrapped with high-grade medical gel. A soft light blinked beside her bed, measuring her heartbeat. She opened her eyes and saw John sitting across the room. His jacket was off, shirt rolled at the sleeves, and a deep tiredness in his eyes. But when he saw her looking, he smiled. You're awake, he said. She nodded slowly. Her throat was dry, but not in pain anymore. Where are we? She whispered. John stood and walked over. Somewhere safe, he said, handing her a cup of water. The commander took us to a hidden outpost. Zarya sipped the water carefully. Why? She asked. Why would he help you? John sat beside her and leaned forward because he knows the truth matters. And he's tired of following orders that hide it. She nodded weakly. And my people. John looked down. They know you're alive, he said. But they've already called you a traitor. Zarya closed her eyes. Of course, she whispered. I was never strong enough for them. John reached for her hand. You're stronger than all of them. They ran, he said. You stayed alive. You fought to live even when no one else wanted you to. Her fingers curled around his. You gave me a reason, she whispered. Days passed, and her body grew stronger. The outpost had proper carrier food, clean water, and peaceful silence. Every day, John stayed near her, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in silence. They shared stories about their homes, their childhoods, their regrets. Zarya laughed when John told her he once broke a commander's toilet and blamed the dog. John chuckled when she admitted she once shaved her sister's hair in secret as payback. Laughter didn't come easy, but with each story, it felt more natural. One morning, a medic came into her room and smiled. Time to try walking, she said gently. Zarya looked at her leg. Still stiff, doubt filled her eyes. John stood beside her and held out his hand. You don't have to, he said, but I'll be right here if you try. She took a deep breath and slowly slid off the bed. Her feet touched the floor, her balance shook, and her arms trembled, but she didn't fall. One step, two, painful but possible. John walked backward slowly. Hands out, you've got this. He said Zarya gritted her teeth and took another step, then another. By the fifth, her eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from pride. She was walking again. After that day, everything changed. She trained a little more each morning. Her strength returned, not just in her legs, but in her heart. She wasn't the abandoned girl on the battlefield anymore. One evening, she stood on the deck of the ship beside John. Stars above them, quiet winds humming through the steel. They still hate me. She said softly, "My people." John nodded. "But some will listen," he said. "Some will hear your story, and that's where we start." She looked at him. "You want to tell my story?" He turned toward her. "Our story," he said. "They need to know what happened. They need to know that an alien girl, left for dead, was more human than any commander I ever served." Zarya smiled. She looked out at the stars. "Then, let's tell them." Weeks later, a small broadcast went out across neutral space. A simple video. A young alien woman with calm eyes speaking into a camera. She told them what happened. How she was left behind. How a human soldier risked his life to save her. She didn't ask for revenge. She didn't cry for war. She simply told the truth. People listened. Some were angry. Some were shocked. But many were moved. She received messages from both sides. A human girl wrote, "Thank you for showing us not all aliens are monsters." An alien mother sent, "My daughter plays your words on repeat." One day, Zarya walked into the command room wearing light armor, not for battle, but for protection. She stood taller, her walk steady now. John turned and smiled at her. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded. "Let's go make peace." Loud enough for everyone to hear, they stepped onto the transport ship together, not as soldier and alien, not as enemy and survivor, but as something greater, proof that hope can survive. Even in war, proof that kindness speaks louder than bullets, and proof that even in a world divided by fear, one human, one alien girl could begin to heal it.